Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, music's all about capturing mood. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean that you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals. We pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more, and I like to know in a conversational fashion. You know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to assume that you do, because quite frankly, you're listening. So please keep listening to this audio-only experience and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere. Places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seeds YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we'd absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, Letterboxd, the TikTok, the Blue Sky, the Threads, and probably several other places at In the Seeds for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large, because guess what? If we live to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we live it all that much more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us that ultimate kindness. Come on by and pay us a visit. Well, on this episode, we've got ourselves a fun one, as we're diving into the world of The Night Manager, which you can find on over at Prime Video with our friends at Amazon. Fantastic show. Great continuation of the first series. They dial it back for more John le Carre action. And obviously in this Emmy Awards consideration season, we had the unique pleasure of sitting down with composer Federico Jusid to talk about his work on the show and crafting that spy feel, that le Carre feel, especially when you're making something new. But it's in a universe that kind of already exists, and there's been other iterations, all that kind of stuff. It was a fantastic talk, and I mean, the music in the show is really quite good, and it adds to the whole ambiance of the piece, which at the end of the day is very important. But that's it, you know. We love talking to composers. Composers are interesting guys, and Federico is one of them. But, check out The Night Manager over on Prime Video. Both seasons are available now. But first, enjoy our talk with composer Federico Jusid, because between you and me, it's a pretty darn good one. So enjoy, and we'll see you soon. Federico, obviously, man, first off, just thank you so much for the time today, and I mean, congrats on your work on Night Manager.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your work and your interest in this.
Well, I mean, really, I think my first question is, I'm always kind of fascinated when someone in your position has to come into something like a second season. Because you're kind of having to work off something that's already been built, but you have to kind of evolve into it. Like, how do you tackle a job like that as a composer? Because you want to sort of obviously acknowledge what happened, but still make something new for what's going forward.
Well, I guess we've both been through this, from the screenwriters to the directors to the art and production designers. So when I got the job, I freaked out because I loved The Night Manager Season 1. I loved the score of The Night Manager Season 1. I know Victor. I mean, it was like, why me? Why am I doing this? And then I sat with Georgie and I think it was Steven on that first meeting, producer, and I understood they were doing a second season, but many new things were happening. The characters were in a different stage. This was definitely a new director, new approach. So to me, that was a lifesaver, because yes, it had to be faithful to the core of the character, but it was needed. Apparently, a new take on this. It was needed. That's why the production called to begin with a new director.
Yeah,
so that made me give me some peace of mind, to be honest.
I mean, I love your work on this, and I mean, I think what really stood out for me is it still has that spy language, sort of that Jean le Carre feel. I mean, when you're making something like this, I mean, I can imagine there's a challenge in sort of understanding sort of the tone of the piece and sort of really understanding sort of how like a spy thriller sounds. if that makes any kind of sense.
Oh, it does. It does. And thank you for saying that, because I think that was part of the challenge. I mean, sounding new or refreshed, but yet honoring that spy tone. And in a way, it's a classic. It's a contemporary classic. So
Yeah.
I wanted to honor that. And it's funny because I have written many thrillers that are period stories, and so they happen in the 70s or 60s. But in this case, the director wanted to sound contemporary, wanted to sound new, wanted to use electronics and processed voices, and so the challenge was how to have this classic car but painted in new contemporary colors, so to speak.
For sure, man, for sure.
Mhm.
And I mean, I love that you brought that up because Secret in Her Eyes is probably one of my favorite scores of recent memory. I love that movie to death. And your work there really sort of adds so much to it. And I mean, I'm kind of curious when you're crafting and doing your work, I mean, composing, especially if it's something that's period, like how much does I guess use of instruments or even instrumentation come into play? Like, do you really have to get down to sort of the nitty gritty of, well, this is a movie that's set in the '70s, but no one played that in the '70s, so we can't do that. So, what's the sort of minutia of the music? I guess is probably the best way to
Mm.
put it, especially when it's a period piece.
I think that is a question. That is always a question, and I'm very theory based, because if you're going to write a 60-minute score or a 90-minute score, probably for a movie, that it's very normal, you have to have a foundation. And maybe the foundation is, yes, follow the orchestration of the time, or maybe you go, no, on this one, let's do something different. Let's bring a contemporary color to an old story because it's a new voice, or because the music is playing, the director's voice or the character's voice. So I do go through and over all those discussions with the directors, with the producers, and then with my own team. And I do try to be consistent within each decision. I don't mean that it has to be period sounding when it's a period story
Right.
or otherwise. But I think there must be a conscious choice that serves the narrative. I mean,
I like that. Like that thought,
if you're gonna use a viola da gamba like from 18th century, that's great. But why? why are you gonna do that?
Yeah.
And the other way around, very often I recently scored 1,000 Blows, and I used old instruments, even for some cues that sound like hip hop maybe. But to me, there was something about using old and deteriorated instruments, because it was something that it was connected to the state of the characters. And so I think there's something always fertile in that research and that discussion. And maybe the audience that is not conscious about it, probably not, but it's stimulating to me to write the score, to give direction to the score.
How much of your job sort of is involved in that idea? Because you brought up an interesting point, like it's that idea of finding sort of different sounds out of, like a new guitar or a new kind of guitar will sound different from one that's been played to death. There's going to be sort of subtle variations there. Like, how much of your work is involved in sort of listening for those nuances?
Well, to me, orchestration is as important as the melodic line, so to speak, and especially on contemporary film scoring. Like, I remember on my first movies, in a way, orchestration was a simpler equation, I would say. I don't want to demean that work, but in a way, I don't recall asking so many questions about the sound of a particular show or a particular movie because I think today, in the same way that the cinematography evolved so much, and movies have, different cinematic languages,
For sure.
I think we also have to not just go with piano and strings because we know how they sound, and they sound great, by the way. But I think we're obliged to create for each one a new palette,
Mm.
and sometimes that palette involves, grabbing old instruments and seeing how they sound. And I, not in this room, but in the next room, I have a collection of old instruments that I keep buying, different guitars, different lutes, accordions, and many of those are very, uh, old and out of tune, and but very often they bring something fresh and precise to a particular project. And sometimes you would hear a sound and you could never tell that it comes from a Moroccan instrument play with a cello bow and processed through a guitar amplifier, maybe.
Right, right.
But that has its own thing. And also, when you're, fortunate enough to have abundant work, you need to push yourself to not repeat anything of
Yeah.
what you just did. Say, okay, no, I just used that. Let's look for something new. And maybe that sound triggers a motif, a new theme, or a new. And in the case of the Night Manager, that happened a lot. There are some motifs that are single note motifs, only that they're processed in certain way, and they become a signature in the reiteration for the season.
For sure, for sure.
Mm.
Now, I mean, on a piece like Night Manager, I'm curious because obviously you're there from beginning to end. Do you have to, like, do you think of it as like a 6 hour movie, or can you kind of break it up into episodic chunks as you're building the music?
I mean, to be honest, maybe because I'm old, but I need to think as one piece, because I don't want to land in episode 4 and not have thought about how to evolve certain motifs so that when it eventually reaches that episode, especially in a show like The Night Manager, where the characters kind of evolve, and they unfold, and you get to know them, and the Teddy Dos Santos that you meet in Ep 1 is totally different than from Ep 6. So different, and that journey needs to be planned. You cannot just open Ep 4 after you've written only after you've written the first episode, the first 3 episodes, because you're not planning the arc of the character. And I think the arc of his motif needs to mirror that, or to relate to that. I don't mean mirror that has to be equal, that has to relate to that. And if you listen to his themes first, he's played as a very dangerous guy, very dark guy, and slowly, like, you get a peep from his soul, or his suffering, or his more human side. And the music also kind of goes, or his music, his motifs go into a more emotional, fragile version. So yes, I think the idea of a 6 hour movie is good. And then, of course, maybe in the end of the episodes, there are some,
Yeah.
cliffhangers and different devices within.
No, I mean, for sure. I mean, it speaks to the need to really sort of having an understanding of the material. And I mean, I'm curious for your perspective on something because I've talked with many composers, and the impression I'm always getting is that it feels like the art of film composing or composing for film or TV, however you want to define it, is where you as an artist seem to have almost the most creative freedom to sort of experiment and try and not sort of be sort of confined by a box. Like if I mean I know you compose for other things and you do this and you do that, but it feels like with film and television, the idea that you can play a little bit is not just encouraged, it's almost demanded.
Mm. That's mostly true. Unfortunately, there are projects where maybe the filmmakers are expecting something, or better said, they already know what they want, and they're just expecting you to fill that blank. And in that case, you get to play less. But to be fair, as my career evolved, I meet more and more filmmakers that want to work with me because I get to play and try stuff, not just to follow the temp track, but to try to bring something that will eventually or hopefully, you know, enrich the previous material. And I think exactly as you said, that every time a composer explores something and gets something new and fresh, that brings uh, great energy and a great refresh to the material,
Well, and
uniqueness.
that really does speak to just sort of the nature of the creative industry on so many aspects. I mean, I can imagine, obviously, especially as you're starting out, there would be people be like, "Okay, I want you to sound like John Williams, but I can afford you, so go and do it." And I mean, there's going to be actors and directors that will all have sort of those similar mandates, but the further down the road you get, the more freedom it opens up for you.
It is the case. I mean, I've had to not write like John, thank God, but yes, to follow an idea of certain temp, and I would always try to present alternative cues where maybe they do follow maybe the syntax of the temp, but how about we add this thing? And sometimes I was successful in selling those ideas, and often not, and they were just attached to what they want. But it's true that as one career evolves, you get to be called for the special cooking or for the exploration. At least for the
Right.
exploration. I don't want to say that it's special because it's better. It's just that you get to explore more, and now and then to come up with something a little more personal.
I love that. I love that. And I'm going to just put a bow on this, man. I got to ask, was there a film score or a film moment in your life that you as a musician sort of noticed and went, "Hey, I could do that. That's pretty cool."
Yeah, many, of course, John Williams.
Yeah.
It's Yeah, of course, and I went to the cinema to watch E.T. and all those movies. So of course, but then of course Morricone, Cinema
Oh, yeah,
Paradiso,
Madonna.
and I remember coming out of the Giuseppe Tornatore Cinema Paradiso, and going wow, and definitely those pieces were so moving, and I remember back then I was being a quote unquote classical composer and pianist. I was mostly playing Beethoven and Chopin and all that. So those chords that were not too distant from the music I was performing in
Right.
style. John's music is very 19th century in a way, and of course Morricone. So that was a very appealing bridge to the film scoring. I
Do you still think
recall,
you're
I
there,
recall
or are you
this.
kind of drifting more towards like a Vangelis kind of idea?
I think what I think happened is that as we mentioned before, the narrative, the cinematic narrative changed.
Yeah.
So it's hard to find a movie where you can write such a rich score like John Williams, let alone that one can do it or not. I'm just talking about, of course, I'm not even daring to compare. I'm just saying that not only John Williams is such an amazing composer, but also he got to write on movies that not only allowed for, but they called for a rich dense, full of counterpoint score.
Yeah.
You know, I get this note very often, and I'm getting this note on this day on a show I'm working on. Like, too many things are happening, like on the score. I love the music, but, you know, we want a simpler version, and I get it. It's not that I am a Baroque person and they're, you know, minimalistic. It's just that some contemporary narratives don't allow such a, you know, a rich,
Yeah.
dense score. So in a way, you have to listen to the movie or to the episode, and sometimes, you know, refrain from writing something that could be fancier musically speaking, but it could be getting in the way, and that's wrong.
No,
That's
and you're
wrong.
right, man. I mean, it's so important to evolve with the narrative at the end of the day. And I mean, honestly, my friend, thank you so much for the insight and talking today. And just congrats again on your work on Night Manager, man. I really loved it.
Thank you so much, David.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.